Welcome, everyone. Thanks again to our speakers here today. I'm going to ask each of them to do a quick, self-introduction. Let's start here with Nathan.
Hi, everybody. Right before lunch, so we're going to keep this fun and exciting, so that we can all go into the food with a little bit of a extra hunger built up. My name is Nathan Lovelace. I'm responsible for sales in the Americas for Blue Shift. Blue Shift is a customer data platform and marketing execution platform in one that allows our customers to take their data about their customers, enrich that with advanced AI and other machine learning insights, and then execute that across any channel as part of the customer experience.
Great. Chad?
Yeah, so Chad Hooker. I head up alliances globally for Fluent Commerce. Fluent Commerce, we're a 100% cloud native, always built for the cloud, distributed order management platform. So we would sit behind the commerce or the selling channels and aggregate all the inventory and orders, so that all the work that you did using platforms like our friends here at Blue Shift to get the eyeballs at the site, we then effectively manage all the inventory and orders to fulfill on those promises that you made.
Great. And then last but not least, Kapenzi, please.
Hi, my name is Kipenzi. I'm the CEO and founder of Lineage. We specialize in luxury, sustainably sourced executive gifts and accessories. We have offices in Los Angeles, New Orleans, and manufacturing in Istanbul, Turkey.
Great. Can you speak into the mic when you talk?
Sure.
And I think we have a few slides here just of some of your product. You want to just talk towards some of it?
This is our Stansberry. We basically started, when I started the company, it was with the impetus of doing good and finding creative ways to find and source our products. So one of the things that was really close to us is that all of our materials are food sources first. So I've developed different relationships with farmers and co-ops around the world, so that way we can responsibly and ethically source a lot of our materials. And so kind of working backwards in the supply chain, and looking at what parts of the world eat which particular meats or byproducts or things like that, and use those kinds of materials, and then going to those farms and asking them, like, hey, if you're not going to use it for composting, can I get 10 to 15% of that? And that's what I use for our manufacturing. And so it started out as direct to consumer, and then we've now evolved into B2B, and we have contracts with the NFL. We've done some work for BMW, Benedict College, and a lot of other larger organizations, and kind of pass this kind of model onto them. And so it's been a really great experience so far.
Yeah, give a sense of some of the raw materials that you're really talking about for some of your products.
So some of our, we use ostrich, we do crocodile, we've used python, and kind of knowing what parts of the world where those protein sources are readily eaten by the population also helps with the sourcing aspect of it. Because, I mean, as many of us know, no one's going to stop eating meat. And so finding out where those high numbers are, and working with those different organizations, using free trade zones has been an amazing way for us to kind of stay ahead of things, as well as cutting costs and making sure that we're meeting our bottom line, as well as supporting the businesses that we work with, because we work primarily with BIPOC organizations.
So tell us about the connection to Turkey, the country, not the bird.
I actually started there. I did an exchange program with my MBA, and I fell in love with the country, the people. I had some amazing friends. And so initially, when I finished my MBA, the goal was to work for a fashion company. And then, of course, life throws you different things. My mom was diagnosed with Huntington's disease, and I was like, how am I going to take care of her? What are we going to do? And I reached out to my friends, and they were like, well, what do you want to do? We'll help you. We'll figure it out. And then I was like, but I love handbags. And they're like, we'll make it happen. We'll introduce you to somebody. We'll get you to the right people. But I wanted to make sure that I did it differently. So another thing that I kind of took on was realizing in the promotional product space, especially in the industry, there was a miss. Like, we all get tchotchkes. We all get different things when we're going to events. But there was nothing that I ever really wanted to hold on to. And that's kind of where the thought process behind creating branded items that people actually wanted to keep kind of started to formulate. And I was like, oh, I can figure out how to do both of these. And so far, it's been pretty good. And yeah, I think
Yeah, and Turkey is applying to become part of the EU. Is that right? Is that kind of
they're
factor
applying to
into?
be part of the
Yeah.
EU. So, and kind of taking a lot of the what I've learned in school. And so, like, some companies haven't really figured out how to use the free trade zone spaces. And so, once I figured out how to use that to my benefit and establishing my offices in different places where there were only free trade zones, so I could cut down on costs and still be able to pay my employees really well, was also something that was exceptional, that was really important to me throughout this process. So yeah.
Okay, great. Nathan, let's have you kind of jump in here in terms of whether it's for a brand like Capenzi's where they're still young but growing fast, or whether it's a big established brand. How are you seeing or how do you guys advise in terms of a brand having a centralized strategy with regional execution? We've often had this kind of organizational conversation around what's the right way to go. Do you guys have a particular point of view on this?
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually think this is a fun panel because you get the entire spectrum across what I think are the core competencies for an e-com customer. At Blue Shift, we really think about how do you make the best possible customer experience from that moment of consideration to the checkout. And then I know you've got, then that's all about that finding the customer, getting them to make the purchase. And then there's the fulfillment part. But you got to have a great product before you even attack either one of those. And so I think we've got perspectives across that entire spectrum. When we think about that idea of centralization, what we've seen in the customers that we partner with is this idea of more and more of a customer experience approach. And that whether or not that is executed regionally with individual groups taking an appropriate approach for LATAM or for Europe or for the Americas versus doing that all out of a central and then allowing individual decision at the edge. In either of those cases, a lot of the problems or a lot of the challenges are the same, specifically when you're thinking about acquiring net new customers. That process is getting harder, not easier, and that process is getting increasingly difficult as traditional D2C playbooks that required sort of low acquisition costs and an expected turnover change over time. And so I think as most organizations are shifting from that, I can through just customer acquisition costs acquire net new customers and are shifting to an LTV model. A lot of them are thinking differently about the playbooks that they build for their customer engagement and customer strategies. When they think about that on a local level, what that really comes down to is what I need to do now, which as opposed to previously, is I need to make sure that every experience that I have with my customer is optimized to that individual moment. And that optimization comes regionally, and it's going to be different in LATAM. It's going to be different in EMEA than it is going to be in the Americas. And that creates a whole different set of challenges around customer data, coordination of customer journeys, and being smarter with every interaction that you have a chance to have.
Well, and certainly we've heard it in a number of sessions. Again, the margin squeeze that's happening at the top end, of the funnel. So places that much more emphasis on kind of having that right balance between acquisition and retention. Fair enough?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, Chad. Let's talk a little more to distributed order management. What is it? I mean, I think some of the crowd may know, but it's been a hot topic for quite a while, as we've seen. Omnichannel just certainly take hold everywhere.
Yeah, for sure. And so the way that we look at distributed order management is the order management bit is the easy bit, and that's the fun bit. The hard bit is the inventory bit. And so what you have to start with is understanding where all of that inventory sits. And so what we do is we aggregate all of those sources of inventory, whether that's stores, DCs, drop ship, 3PLs, wherever that inventory sits. We understand where that is, and we keep that inventory picture refreshed. We don't want to be the inventory system of record, but we do want to be the availability system of record, so that we understand where everything sits, and then we understand the effort to get it from A to B, such that as a person is shopping on whatever that calling channel looks like, we're able to provide that availability to understand when and where that item could be shipped. Because we've all been on websites and we've all seen where you could get an item in 3 to 5 days. Everybody knows that's a guess, and everybody knows that's likely may or may not happen. And so what we do is we're able to aggregate that up so that we can provide that availability picture. And then as the customer is going through the journey and whatever that situation may be, and adding items to the basket, once we've created that, then we are then after the buy button looking at the best way to fulfill that basket as a whole. As we understood where everything sat, now that we can figure out what's the best way from split ships, consolidated shipping, getting it to a central location, and then shipping out. And then we are then orchestrating that fulfillment so that if it's out of a store, we have store applications so that the store associate has the UIs and the capability to pick ready for carrier shipment or customer pickup. We also then are creating and orchestrating the communication out to the warehouse to figure out when the item's been picked, when the item's been shipped, and we're communicating that back out to the customer so that they have visibility into the process and their understanding. And then should something go wrong with that, then we're orchestrating the reallocation and then communicating back out. And then once the customer receives it, if should the customer not be happy with it, we're then orchestrating the return to get that back into stock or back to a vendor or dispose or whatever, and making sure that we're providing that platform that gives complete visibility to the inventory ahead of time. Because what we saw was, pre-pandemic, digital was just a channel, and then it became the only channel. And then there was inventory orphaned across the supply chain with supply chain issues, panic buying, and inventory became obviously very scarce and very hard to understand and understand how to manage. And we had some of our customers that maybe had traditionally never shipped out of stores. Using Fluent, they were able to. We got a great case study on our website about JD Sports that went from not shipping out of stores to shipping out of stores in 5 days, and the majority of that was obviously operational processes. But we were able to give them the tools to be able to understand where that inventory was that was locked up in stores and malls or whatever, and be able to have them where they could use and fulfill orders during those early days when we were all just trying to figure out what was going on.
Yeah, I mean, we heard a number of interesting stories along those lines. Tom Davis from Cartier talked about how they were trying to tap into all that inventory sitting in stores that were closed around the world. But really interesting. And, I think what you mentioned visibility multiple times, and that's what it kind of comes down to. But we've always said, again, omnichannel needs to be built upon visibility to where's my inventory and visibility to who are my customers, and having a single, source of truth, so to speak. So again, it's really interesting to hear how we have been progressing as an industry. Nathan, anything you want to kind of add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think what it does is it starts when you start thinking about inventory availability and you start thinking about that regional approach, you get to have some different conversations about how do I choose the right moment to re-engage with customers, even if they're not necessarily in a buying cycle. So we have a luxury brand, reminds me a lot of our conversation here, called Jared Allen, that is a jeweler. And for them, the biggest question is, with that purchase, actually things like price fluctuation, price adjustments, in addition to inventory, end up actually being great triggers for re-engagement of your customer base. And so what we've seen them be able to do without having to build additional, or without having to wait for the inventory report to come back, and then you decide, well, which customers were the ones, and you do a mapping of those two lists in the marketing or the merchandising team, and then you have to load that up into whatever your channel of choice, whether that's SMS, email, or on the website. What they were able to do is automate a lot of that. And based on preference, they can actually go and see who were the individuals that were interested in this particular item, what was their level of interest. And let's not give it to everybody, because if we blast everybody, we're just going to create a new inventory problem. And instead, let's focus on not only on the people that are most likely to be interested in that. And with Blue Shift, what they're able to do is basically automate that, not only when the price is adjusted based on what's going on within the business, but also even choose the channel that is preferred by that individual consumer. So for for me, I get an SMS that says that item you were looking at, it just dropped. For Capenzi, it could be you get email and you open it every time. So we're gonna send Capenzi an email, and that ability to, what I think gets mixed oftentimes in the vocabulary of cross-channel marketing with omni-channel execution or omni-channel fulfillment. That's really starting to build the kind of customer experiences that we all now expect.
Well, especially for very SKU intensive businesses, as we've kind of talked about. Capenzi, talk to us about Lineage's international plans, kind of going forward. I mean, you're already a global company with where you're sourcing from and so on, but and kind of put it in the context of your DTC channels versus your more corporate customers.
I would say right now we're kind of in the process of relaunching our DTC because, of course, as we've all discussed all day, the pandemic. And so when that happened, because of the nature of our product, it's very much not essential item. So we saw kind of a drop in our DTCs. And it wasn't until I got a call from a friend who works at a private institution, and they were like, we have to send our board of trustees really nice gifts. Can you make us 500? I was like, yes, I can make you 500. And then the light bulb went off, and it was always a plan to eventually go into the promotional product space, not really promotional products, but really thinking and being deliberate about how companies and corporations and individuals or nonprofits are gifting their benefactors, and really being very deliberate with respects to branding and making sure that it's not overly branded, but making sure that it is something that someone's going to want to hold on to as opposed to something that they're going to throw away once they leave the event. So really taking the time to understand, like, where can we put certain images, where can we put the names, how do we want to add the names, are we going to be using leather materials? Are we going to kind of finish the product all the way through, and really being deliberate in that? So with that one call, my 5-year plan turned into a right now plan. And I went from, DTC mindset of how am I engaging with individual customers? What is their experience like? How are they finding me and shopping for me? And then to a corporation where I'm like, okay, so I just have to think of one company or one customer in a sense. How are they going to be using these items? What colors, what materials, what are their ethos for that particular company? Does it fall in line with me? And then realizing that I can do this on a larger scale. So now I'm shifting from being kind of like a retailer and telling my manufacturer, like, this is what I want, to now I'm the manufacturer. And it also kind of ramped up plans that I had. So then it turned into me buying into a factory and then buying into another factory. And so now I'm like, okay, I'm running 2 factories. Okay, we can do this. This wasn't the plan, but we will make this work. And so now kind of thinking about listening to you, Chad and Nathan, about, how do you connect with these customers, all these different moving logistical pieces, and really having to go back to my books from school and being like, how do I get around some of these customs fees? How do we make this work? How do we not price ourselves out of the market because we don't have enough artisans? Because when you're working with exotic materials, these can't be machined. This is very kind of labor intensive, very hands-on, handcrafted artisan craftsmanships. And so you can't mass produce a lot of these items. They all, especially when you're dealing with python and ostrich, it's very thin, like vellum. And so figuring out how to still provide a very nice product without cutting corners. And so, like I mentioned earlier, free trade zones became my life's blood, and figuring out how to get into them, how to make connections with different logistics companies that were willing to take on a smaller company like mine. Like 500 for me is amazing, but 500 pieces for your companies is that's kind of like what we do in an hour. So figuring out how to make those connections and tell them hey, this is how it's valuable for you. You can consider me a charity case. I'm okay with that. Do me a tax write-off. I'm fine with that. Just make sure you ship my stuff to where it's supposed to be. And kind of talking to people and having to be very personable, but looking at, where manufacturing is, where I'm going to set up my facilities, and deliberately setting them up in places that would give us the best tax breaks, and kind of not necessarily circumventing all of the customs fees, but a bulk of them by using those specialized areas definitely helped.
And if I understand, we were talking over dinner last night. Some of your work with the NFL is now expanding over to Europe, right? To
Yes.
Premier League
Yes, we're
teams.
bidding on some things with a few European few European league teams. So we're really diving deep into the sports industry and really helping them to understand that one, if you want your teams to, if you want this merchandise to move, you're gonna have to make it look better. I'm going to have to help you get polished. I'm going to have to make you look nice. And you're going to also have to understand that there are women out here who also enjoy these sports as well. So, really helping them to see the benefit of really spending time and being deliberate in their manufacturing processes so that way they can also reach a global customer as well, is also something that is that we're really working towards right now.
Really interesting. Chad, let's talk a little bit of the omni-channel complexity. I mean, we've often talked in our global e-commerce strategic frameworks that was kind of the most complex. And yet, kind of to Capenzie's point, that 5-year plan became the right now plan, for many brands. How do you kind of work with clients in terms of identifying the right conditions where they can have more complex fulfillment, drop ship, a number of other different methods.
No, yeah, exactly. And I think, Kapinski's a perfect example of the folks that we work with is that, historically order management was not something for everybody. It was especially omni-channel fulfillment, and one of the reasons that I joined Fluent, honestly, because I've been in the order management game going on almost 20 years now, and the thing that's extremely unique about Fluent is that, like I mentioned in the beginning, we're 100% cloud native. We were always built for the cloud, and what that means is that we were able to use all of the knowledge of 30 years of e-commerce to be able to put it into a new modern architecture that's scalable, performant, but also is scalable in terms of the customers that we can serve because we can deploy it as either a single tenant or a multi-tenant SaaS. We can really right size the platform for the customer and meet their needs. So we work with a lot of folks that are maybe a single brand, maybe one web property, couple of DCs, all the way up to the larger, like I mentioned, JG Sports, L'Oreal, and we're able to do that with one platform, which was really unique to me, and this is what really drew me to Fluent. So we really look to find customers that we can help that have complexity, because if you're just shipping out of one warehouse, there's not a lot of complexity in where the inventory sits. It's pretty easy to go count it and figure out where it is. If you're in a situation like Capinzi, where you're digging into multiple factories and multiple countries and multiple geos, that's where we are able to really provide value and help provide the orchestration of that inventory. And then it's one thing to talk about that in terms of a single country. Once you start shipping across borders, just like what you're talking about, all the free trade zones, having to do that manually and having to manage all that manually can be quite taxing, I would. And so being able to for us, being able to have a rules-based system where you can easily define those rules of where and when and how to ship, and be able to manage that centrally in one location has proven to be of great value to the customers that we work with.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Nathan, in a similar way, we've talked about this kind of marketing mindset shift away from channels to lifetime, value. I mean, how would a brand know they're ready for that, or what are the things that you kind of look for to say?
Oh, I don't think it's a question of whether or not you're ready. I think it's a requirement now within most organizations. When you're thinking about the fact that acquisition costs are not going down, just full stop. They're not going down. I mean, Capenzi, you can let me know. You live it day in and day out. But whether or not that's traditional digital channels becoming more expensive, whether or not that's the actual attention cost that we all are pulled in 15 different directions. In any one of those situations, the idea of how do you acquire net new customers versus how do you keep customers that you already have, I think the balancing is continuing to shift, where in a lifetime value view of the world versus an acquisition view of the world, you have to think about every interaction as a potential across the customer experience as a potential action for keeping that customer. And that changes the way in which you think about every one of your touch points. And what I think is fascinating about this conversation is how much of, fulfillment, we talked about this previously, how much fulfillment is now is a customer touch point. It's an opportunity to impress or disappoint a customer. When we extend that all the way up, every time anybody's on your website, showing them a product that they are interested in, that recommendation engine part of it, that's now required, I think, to a certain extent. You can't just put up just a featured item and then expect that to be the conversion. So across the board, the companies that we're seeing that are being really, really successful are the companies who are now thinking about that customer data suite and the execution channels across customer experience as one idea, not my email team, my procurement team, my SMS team, my website team. It really is a single journey.
Capenzi, any kind of comment from Lineage? Like where are you when you think of your marketing planning and campaigns?
Everywhere. We're everywhere. But I would also say back to what you were saying about the fulfillment and kind of like that, what happens with logistics. I can tell you, like last week, we had a breakdown in customs. We had items coming into South Carolina, and they were like, oh, it's going to be a 5-day hold. Meanwhile, my client was like, our event is in 2 days. And I was like, there's no way you can get it out. All our brokers are booked. The only other person was me. So I had to fly from LA to South Carolina to go to the customs borders to get everything released and then deliver it to both customers in 2 different cities. So one was in Charlotte, the other was in Columbia. But there was no other way, because right now with everything being so impacted, it is really a must. It's one of those things where customers are expecting you to go above and beyond as far as making sure that their orders and their products reach their destinations in a timely manner. And if you drop the ball, be it a large company or one like mine, the likelihood of you winning that customer back is very slim. And then the amount of money it's going to take you to get a new customer to replace that one, it's insurmountable. So it's like you might as well go ahead and jump through the hoops and make sure on the fulfillment side that whatever you're saying you can deliver, you can, and then do whatever it takes to kind of get it there. So that way you don't have to go through that acquisition process again.
Okay, so just in wind-up mode here, Capenzi, what's next, especially internationally for Lineage?
Europe. I want to take over Europe.
World domination. We love it.
I want to make all the brands that have been giving out the tchotchkes, I want to make them better and look prettier. I want everyone to hold on to everything. And then if they decide they want to give it away, bury it in the backyard. It's going to biodegrade. It's all back to the earth. And we have less waste. That's the plan.
That's awesome. Chad, what are you watching kind of trend-wise, especially as it relates to global e-commerce? What are you kind of keeping an eye on?
Yeah, I mean, for us, I think you touched on it, right? We realize that there is a tremendous amount of work and brand and reputation and everything, and the work that the team like at Blue Shift does to get customers to that spot. For us, it's now looking at how can we make that administrative side of order management be even better, so that we're using tools like AI and ML to look at what's going on in the system and make recommendations on how we should be using the system for sourcing strategies versus maybe having a person have to figure that out. Because just as I said, that we recognize that our role is quite unique, and that we have quite a lot of responsibility because we are the last touch point. And if we drop the ball, all the work that went in ahead of us is for naught, and the cost for our customers to have to go and retrieve more a new set of customers is insurmountable almost in that cycle. And so for us, it's making our tooling better, easier, more predictive, so that they can do better in their fulfillment of their customer needs.
That's great. Nathan, last word, same question. What are you watching for in terms of trends?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is this shift from an idea of operational channel-centric approaches to a true understanding that customer journey is a cross-functional activity. And as a result of that, you can't think about it in silos. And so whether or not those silos are organizational, whether or not those silos are data oriented or IT infrastructure, or whether or not those silos are thinking about a customer journey as they have never bought, they have bought, and then we want them to buy again. Every one of those requires a fundamental shift in the way I think particularly leadership at those kinds of organizations are optimizing and asking the questions of their team to think about this from a true buyer's perspective, not just a fulfillment or an execution perspective.
That's great stuff.